Hey everybody, it's Robert and you're watching Sidestep Adventures, and today I am with Miss Lisa Whitesnant Shaughnessy at the old Whitesnant place here in Waverly Hall, Georgia, and you are a third generation family member to this house, so she's going to take us through the house and tell us some history about it.
So originally when the house was built, this was a dirt road out here, and there was none of this shrubbery that's obviously gotten too high, but all this shrubbery wasn't here, and it was just dirt all the way across. And so it didn't look anything like this in terms of the yard, but this is how I remember it, because I was born in 1960, and by then they had paved the road and they had put up the shrubbery, so I always knew it just like it is now. But there's pictures of us. In fact, there's a picture of my grandmother, Lydia, sitting in the middle of the road. Why they were doing that, I have no idea, but you know, that's what people did, things with not much traffic going by, I guess. They could sit in the middle of the road. Of course, this is, you know, this is the front porch where we spent hours and hours of time. Cut some of this out. But my grandfather, I didn't know my grandfather. He died when I was 2. So, I mean, I have one memory of him. He's actually going down these steps. He had some sort of plaid shirt on. But anyway, my grandmother, I spent a lot of time on this porch, and she had these beautiful pots of flowers, and we called them Japanese lily, fairy lilies. They were lilies that were sort of purplish in color, and she liked to count them every day. But she always had geraniums and touch-me-nots and all that sort of thing. And my grandfather would sit here, and my Uncle George lived here, he was disabled all of his life. He walked till he was about a senior in high school, but he used to sit out here too, before he moved to the Waverly Hall nursing home, which he thought was the greatest thing that ever happened to him, because it was like a little apartment. And so he got to finally be independent, and I think he was maybe 50 years old. I don't know how old he was when he moved over there. My sister would know better. But there was also a crabapple tree right here that my grandmother famously made crabapple jelly. And we talked about if my sister had, you know, been able to move here, we were going to replant the tree and make more crabapple jelly. But I spent a lot of time here on the front porch. We all did.
Lisa, when did you say your family got this place?
I'm sorry. My grandfather and my paternal grandmother, who died not long after childbirth with my aunt Elizabeth. She was 2 years old. She had pneumonia. They bought it in 1919. And so they raised all the kids here, and we can talk more about this later, but the reason this house is so significant to all the family is we were here together every Christmas morning for 75 years. And that, of course, ended with COVID. But, and then when my cousin he was the heir to the house, my Uncle Mullins, who ultimately bought it when my grandmother died years later, that ended. We had one more breakfast with my cousin living here, and then that was the end of that. My cousin died, and so we haven't been in the house since then. But the Christmas breakfast was started because when my mother and daddy got married, my grandmother was fully opposed to that marriage, but she was convinced that the only way we would stay connected was to have all the family come back and have Christmas breakfast together. And so she started that back in 40, I'm going to say 45, maybe 46. I'm not sure when she started it, but regardless, they must have started it before then, because my dad went to the war So it was probably, they were married in 41, no, I don't remember the year. It's either 41 or 43, but regardless, they started that breakfast before then. And then my dad went to the war, came back. My sister was born in 47, and you know, she remembers more of anything than all of us do. But because she was the first grandchild, and she and my grandmother were very, very close. So, but my grandfather was a not pulpwood, but a logger. You know, he came down here to cut pine trees, and it was the sawmill. They worked in all the sawmills around here. They would go in different places, but that's how he earned his living. A bunch of them came from North Carolina. He was actually from Hickory, North Carolina. I think there were 6 of them, 5 boys and 1 girl, the Whitesnants. And a lot of Whitesnants still live in North Carolina, and we still have cousins that live up there in Hickory, but they moved down here to earn a living, you know, not too long after they moved here. They, you know, bought this house, and they lived down in like Mulberry Grove. Mulberry Grove is where they were originally living, I think. That's where my dad was born. And so there were 5 children that lived here. My father, Billy, my Uncle George, he was the firstborn. Then my father, Billy, that was the nickname he gave himself. His name was actually Roman Garland, but the tale is that he went to school and they didn't like, everybody was making fun of his name, so he changed his name when he came home. I don't know, I have no idea if that's true or not, but that's what I was told. And then of course my Aunt Elizabeth was born, and then when my paternal grandmother passed away, Mary, when they went to bury her back up in North Carolina with her family, my grandmother watched the kids for them to go up there. And later on, a couple years later, I guess, I don't know what the passage of time was, but they got married and then had 2 more children, my aunt, my uncle Mullins, Judge Mullins Wisnant, and then Aunt Phoebe. So that's the 5 children. So it was George Thomas Wisnant, and then my grandmother Mary, she was a Parker, and then she passed away, and my grandmother Lydia, she was a Mullins, which is why my uncle is named Mullins Wisnant. So, but married her, and then there's 5 kids who are all buried out in Waverly Hall on the same road in the cemetery. So it's an interesting fact. Do we want to go in now?
Yeah.
So this is the hallway, and I start off by saying it's significant because when we were having the breakfast every year, all the doors were closed. There was no central heating and air at that time. And so all the doors stayed closed, and you know, you'd have to wear a coat in here because it was the same as it was outside. But there were like, when I was here, I mean, originally there were fireplaces, I guess, but there were those big gas stoves, and you know, it stayed pretty warm. It was very comfortable. And this is the dining room where we all had breakfast as our family grew and grandchildren came and all that sort of stuff. This was the breakfast room, but the original breakfast were down in the kitchen. So, but this is where we spent most of our, you know, my childhood and my growing up life. But the joke is that there was always a children's table. You know, that's in every family. There's a children's table, and the children's table was just a little card table. And then we kept having so many children, they had to figure out where we were going to put them all. You know, there were so many grandchildren. And speaking of grandchildren, the 3rd generation, there were 2 children. Uncle Mullins had 2 children. Aunt Phoebe had 2 children. And my mom and dad, there were 4 of us. And so those were all the first cousins with each other, you know. So there were John and Becky Sue, Billy Thomas, Amberly, me, and then Deborah and Jeff. And I think I remembered everybody. Uncle Mullins, Aunt Phoebe. Yeah, I got everybody. Just making sure I didn't miss anybody. But anyway, this hall, the story goes, one year it was so cold, somebody had brought some sort of plant and put it here like a violet or something for a Christmas gift, and it was so cold it burned, you know, it froze the plant. That's how cold it was in here. And of course, this room here was always my grandmother's bedroom, and that opening that you see over there used to be a closet. This fireplace is not original to the house. Neither were these cabinets. Those weren't there. If you want to go in there and look at those cabinets for a minute. This was it was a closed-up fireplace with no brick, and it had and when I knew it, it had like a gas, one of those big gas metal. I don't know what you call those, furnace. I guess it was a one-room furnace, and they were in all three of these 4 rooms. This is what they call, I guess, a shotgun house. I guess they call it that. This was the only real bedroom that I ever got to sleep in. My aunt, who was, I guess people would call her an old maid or whatever, she and my uncle lived in this room. He slept on a full-size bed, and she slept on this sofa that I don't know where she got it, but it folded out. And so her entire life, she slept on, until when they got grown, she slept on this sofa while he slept over here. I always thought it was sort of interesting and maybe a little unfair, but that's what she did. And when I came over, I slept with her on that couch. I would get so excited about sleeping on that couch because she'd let me fix it up and all that sort of stuff. This bathroom that's here is not original to the house. There were no bathrooms in this house. I don't know what year this was added on, but probably I'm going to say the 50s maybe. But there were just outhouses here originally. I think we missed a room. Let's see, there's a little closet here. There's little closets on each side, tiny little closets. Hope whoever ends up here doesn't have many clothes. And that's why people had what they call shipper robes, They have a big closet that had a little rod in it. And back then people didn't wear clothes like we wear them now, They had one outfit for work and then they had a Sunday best, right? So they didn't need a lot of closet space. But this was the bedroom as I knew it. And before this house was sort of redone, when my uncle bought it, what year was that? My grandmother, I don't know. See, this is where I need my sister, but my grandmother died, Lydia, she died, and he bought the house, and he had it renovated, but there used to be these string lights. These fans weren't here. They were just one string and one light bulb, and that was the only light that was in the rooms. And as the story goes, when my daddy married my mother, Ramona, she came and lived here with them in this house. And I guess they slept in this bedroom. I don't really know all the details of that, but I suppose they did. But my mother had cataracts. She had congenital cataracts, but she didn't know that at the time. But she couldn't see very well. And she would put a 100-watt bulb or a bigger wattage bulb. My grandmother was so cheap that she would come back and she would replace it. That's the story. I don't know if that's true, but she wouldn't let me run the water very long. She would say, "You're running the water too long." She was always very frugal, and my uncle got that from her as well. So that's the 4 rooms on the front side, and then the porch is original on the front, and this back porch is original. I think you can tell from the wood. This is the original well, and I know that we got water. We kept things cold in here. I don't remember all that happening because they had stopped they had refrigeration by the time I came along, but they had a working farm. They had chickens and cows and horses and mules, and they raised vegetables and sold them and milk, butter, and eggs. And my grandmother churned butter. And this was originally, I don't know whether they were the first or second owners of the Waverly Hall Telephone Company, but they also ran that as well. So we had a sign. My cousin actually has that. She lives up in Winchester, Kentucky. She has that Waverly Hall telephone sign, which we'd love to have back here in this house. But anyway, so I guess this was not glassed in. This was open. And it was a screen porch, and maybe there was screen here when I was a kid. I don't remember. I just remember it being open. And I spent a lot of time playing. Oh my gosh, one of our trees fell over. I guess that's a big, wait a minute, is that a big limb?
Yeah.
The limb fell off. Okay, well, that's interesting. And ultimately knocked over another tree, it looks like. Huh. So these are pecan trees, and we have what we call a pecan grove back there. There's just tons of pecan trees. Whether they are, producing or not, I have no idea. But that used to be a chicken pen back there. That utility bill wasn't built here, but there was, chicken houses, and I guess before I was born, there were pig, there was a pig, what do you call it, a pig pen back there. And then there's a big barn back there in the back, and that's where we kept hay and all that sort of stuff. Is that locked? Is that locked?
I think it is.
Yeah. We have to go around to see the kitchen then. So I think this kitchen was an add-on. I'm pretty sure it was. But what year, I don't know. It appears that, it's a little confusing because it appears that these windows are the same as the other windows in the house. At least they look to be the same age. So I don't know whether it was just added differently, but the flooring is different. So, but my sister might know if, my sister might know. Oh, there's the bowl. So my cousin wanted this bowl, and my sister is supposed to get this. This is called a pie safe. Not sure where the handles are, but maybe it's in the drawer somewhere. But this is where the original family had the original breakfast, was in this room. They didn't use the dining room. Why? I don't know. But people were minimalists back then and didn't do all that. But there was a little card table right here, and when we all got big enough and graduated, family was so big, we ultimately had to go into the dining room, and so they would cook breakfast, and we'd all eat, and we'd go up to the front room. Did I show you that room? I guess we didn't go in the. Did we go in the front room? We didn't go in the front room. Yeah. So the front room was what was the living room, and that's where they would have all the presents. They would bring all the presents and put them around the tree, and then we'd eat breakfast, and then we'd go up there and open presents. And my uncle is famously being known for save the ribbon, save the paper, and everybody was like, why do we need to save the paper? That's the way it was. And one of the stories goes that my aunt, they went and cut down a tree, I guess from up at the pasture. We had a bunch of land further up the road here, and they went and cut down a tree, and they brought it down, they put it up in the front, and sister was up there putting the decorations on or whatever, and suddenly she saw something move, and there was a snake in the tree, and of course that was, I guess that's one of the things that comes with getting a fresh tree out of your pasture. But there's so many stories. So my aunt was a bookkeeper for the Reeves Furniture Company, and she would sit here, and I spent a lot of time with her because my dad had multiple jobs: bus driver, he was a barber, and he loved to fox hunt, and he did what I call truck fox hunting, where he had a bunch of dogs and they would go to some appointed place, let the dogs out, and then they would come back. But so he did that. I went with him for, many times, but he also had, cows to feed, and there was lots of farm stuff to do. So he would drop me off, and often I would say, let me just spend the night, Daddy, because I love to unfold the couch that I told you about earlier. But anyway, so I would stay here, but she was a bookkeeper, and every quarter she had to do the payroll taxes, and she had this big machine, and I always say that's where I learned to love numbers and accounting, and I ended up with an accounting degree, but I just wanted to play on that machine that she had. I don't know what's the payroll tax calculator, I guess is what it was before we had computers, but anyway, that's what she did. And I like to come over here because we would have breakfast for supper, and often it was just toast with syrup, which is, what every kid would love. Just sugar, pure sugar. But yeah, they were always making, lots of memories here from, I guess they used to have a Sunday, everybody came and ate dinner. This didn't happen when I was living here. Everybody came and ate dinner on Sunday evening, I guess, but I don't remember being part of that too much. By then, I think everybody was so busy by the time I came along. I am the youngest of all the grandchildren, so clearly the baby. But let's go up here and look. And this used to be a closet, not a pantry like it is now. This closet was my grandmother's, and she got all of her things in here. She always kept this doll in here that I just loved to play with, and she would it was a real special deal to get the doll out and let me play with it, and it would go back in, That's what I remember. And my grandmother, Lydia, she was a big knitter, and she knitted these baby blankets and these baby booties, and that's the other thing that she did to make extra money. and she would sell these booties when people had babies, and they were pretty famous, and the pattern is over 100 years old. I mean, she didn't start knitting, I don't think, till she was 50 maybe, but anyway, I have the original pattern, and so I typed it up, and I learned how to make the baby booties. And I learned to knit because of her knitting expertise. And this is the front room, we called it. People would call it a parlor, I guess, back in the day, or a living room, but we called it the front room, I don't know why. But that's where the Christmas tree with the snake was. And they always put I guess the tree was in different spots, any one of those corners, but always on that side of the room. And I don't remember the furniture too much. It wasn't anything to strike home about, but we have lots of pictures. There was a couch that sat right here, and everybody took pictures on the couch. Lots of pictures of all of us on that couch. And I think it was a Reeves furniture couch, as I recall. But there was always a chair here. I don't remember what was over here, because it's changed a lot after my uncle moved in. But a lot of memories, that's for sure. A lot of memories. Let's see, can we get out of here? So these gates are not original to the house. I will tell you that my husband, Mark, when my uncle was alive, spent a lot of time making gates, fences, whatever he did. There we go. Uncle Mullins would ask him to come. He mowed the grass. My husband's name is Mark. He mowed the grass and kept the shrubbery taken care of. And Uncle Mullins decided he wanted fences. And so my husband put up these fences here and these chain link fence around here. I told him he'd lost his mind, but he and another guy put this chain link in, and then the rest of this stuff here, they put this fence here. I guess that one was okay over there, but anyway. So this is where the chicken pen would have been, if, from the original days. That's what I remember. I don't remember when there were chickens here, but I remember that there's a little gate to go in and a little fence there. And then I never remember, the pigs were gone by the time I came along, but they used to kill hogs and, sell pork and all that sort of stuff. And it was, according to my aunt, a very messy time of, their lives. It was, there was grease everywhere. So this garage is where we used to keep the tractor. At some point, I guess, my aunt had her car in it, and I don't know who built it. It's not original to the property, but I'm sure my grandfather had it built, but they kept, I think there's still a lot of junk in there, but tools, garden, implements and stuff like that. It was really for cars. But most of the time the tractor was kept down here, and the tractor is a big part of our lives, because I spent a lot of time on the tractor with my dad. And it was shared between my uncle and my dad. I guess they bought it together, and they actually bought it from, let me see if I get this straight. They bought it from Mr. Willis, who is the father of Mullins' first wife, Betty Whitesnant, who was well known, was the Harris County superintendent, and she was the great science teacher, chemistry teacher, and still alive, and she would have some stories to tell. I'd love to get her, and it would be great to get her on video, because she probably has some stories to tell. But anyway, they bought that tractor from him, and we still have the tractor today, and it's seen a lot of life, mowing and gardens and stuff. And this is a muscadine vine, or we call them scuppernins. I guess they're technically muscadines, but my uncle, and you can see there's a lot of fruit on it.
Oh, yeah, there is.
A lot of fruit. I don't know who pruned it. I guess one of the gardeners did, but whoever did it, they did a great job, and must know what they're doing, because mine doesn't look nearly this good. My dad planted the one that I have in my yard. I just live a mile from here in my childhood home. But anyway, there's a lot of, my uncle planted this because he loved scuppernins, and I learned how to make the jelly we've always had at Christmas breakfast. So I still make that with, if I can get muscadine. I wish somebody would let me pick these, but they're not ready yet. They're purple in color. There's golden muscadines or scuppernins, and then there's purple, and these are purple. So to whoever's listening that may have this house, one day I want to come pick these. Don't let them go to waste, because I can make a lot of jelly. I'll give you some. So More pecan trees than you could shake a stick at, it looks like. Again, I don't know if they're producing. This is a fig tree. That's the other thing I learned to do from my aunt, who was one of the children at this house, and my mother. They both made figs, and it looks like you don't have very many figs on this. This is an early blush fig, and that's probably why they're gone. Mine is just now starting to make. I have what's called a turkey, brown turkey fig is what I have. I don't know what this variety is, but it's already made figs and done, I guess. That's why you don't see the birds probably ate them all. Of course, out here, from my memory, what was out here were just horses and mules. Even though I don't really remember the mules that well, to be fair. My dad had mules, and I guess he kept some of them over here. But that's the barn that we go up to, what I call the land. We had that 73 acres. It was more than that at the time when I was younger. But we mowed hay and baled it, and it would be brought back here. And we had cousins that lived further out on 208. The Neals owned a dairy farm out there. And the reason there was a relationship, we had cousins that were married. He married my paternal grandmother's sister, baby sister. And so that was the relationship. We often borrowed their little thing that put the hay up in the loft, so we didn't have to climb a ladder and put it up there. Those are just some stories that I remember. And I spent a lot of summers in the pasture helping bale hay. I was probably driving when I was 4 or 5 years old, because I had to. There was nobody else to drive. One of the famous stories goes that we were baling hay, and my cousin John was taking a turn at, I guess driving the truck around so they could throw the bales up on, and they said, "Now go really slow. It's really heavy. Don't make any sharp turns." And guess what he did? He made a sharp turn or a sudden stop, and all the hay fell off. So that's just one of the many funny stories. My dad had cows. My dad and my Uncle Mullins. Everything for my Uncle Mullins was about, some sort of money saving or tax advantage. And so there was a tax advantage to having a farm. You get a lot of tax breaks when you were a farmer. And so they had cows in, I would say, at least 3 or 4 different pastures. There would be cows here, there were cows at my house, there were cows at what we called the old Luttrell place, which is in the middle of Waverly Hall. You maybe know, but we had cows there. There were only a couple cows that were there. And then we had cows, of course, a bunch of cows up at the big farm, the big land up there. And then we had some cows down at the Willis place. My dad was a farmer and a bus driver and a barber. His primary job was a barber, and he had a barber shop here in Waverly Hall on Thursdays. And it's actually, it was the original one that I remember, not the original one, but one of the ones I remember is in the little building where it used to be some primetime video, and there's been several businesses there, but it was on the side, and that used to be a store, and Daddy and I would go back through the store and get lunch and all that sort of stuff. But so he had a lot of jobs, and so I spent a lot of time, going from place to place, feeding the animals, and then sometimes I would say, "I don't want to go anymore," and they'd drop me off here. My sister, my aunt, we called her sister, Elizabeth, she would take care of me while he was finishing up the evening chores. But yeah, Daddy was the farmer, and my uncle, who encouraged the farming, was an attorney and ultimately a district attorney in Muskogee County, and then he became a judge and a Superior Court judge, and people know him as Judge E. Mullins Whitesnant, and he believed in preserving our family history. It's hard. Turn that back on. So these magnolias, they'll tell the brief story. The reason we have these magnolias that probably should never have been planted this close to the house, but clearly they provide a lot of shade. They've been cut, trimmed many, many times. But the story behind these magnolia trees, I actually have one in my yard. Callaway Gardens gave saplings to anybody that wanted them for free. And so, again, the free thing, my uncle, went and got free trees, and they planted these two I think there was one up at the front too, but maybe it died. And then we planted one over in my yard, and they're all still standing, but clearly it's doing a number on that. And I think maybe one of the final stories I'll tell is that there was always the thing about closing the gate. Don't forget to close the gate. I mean, you know, with any animal, you just make sure you close the gate. And of course, it's a nemesis of mine because my husband's a city guy, and he never closes the gates, but we don't have animals, so it doesn't matter. But this gate was always very difficult. I don't know whether it was made poorly or what, but we would have string tied around it, and, you know, don't forget to close the gate. Although, I guess at the time the animals could have gotten out. And they do, and they did, you know. So, gosh, it's interesting when I look at pictures. There's a picture of me and my cousins. We were all Jeff and John and I were all born the same year, and there's a picture of us right here, I think. There was a gate or something right here. And they took a picture of us, and I don't know, we were just being silly, but we spent a lot of time outside, and it was always a pleasure to come here. I always enjoyed my time. And I guess they bricked up, when I was younger, this brick wasn't here. This was all open. And they bricked that in, maybe when my uncle redid the house, but I'm not sure when that re-bricking was done. And clearly there's asbestos siding, and I tell the story of my sister who lived with my mother and father in this house up here. My what would you call that? On my paternal grandmother's side, her mother lived in that house, and so my mother and dad lived in that house with her after they first got married, and then after my dad came back from the war, they had my sister, and they lived up there too. And she was looking out the window one day, and she saw them putting whatever this asbestos siding on over top of this house was brown, and so she just went berserk and was hysterical for hours, they say, you know, just screaming, "Don't tear up my grandmother's house." So that's the infamous story about the asbestos siding that they put on here, which I wish they hadn't. You know, so many of us do now that we know what we know about asbestos, but apparently trying to remove it is a bigger deal than leaving it on. So do you know, Robert, I was asking my sister if she knew if the original roof must have been tin, wouldn't you think?
It would either have been tin or wood shingles. My house was built about 1880, and it was a wood shingled roof.
Okay, then it would have been the same, because the birdhouse they were built in the same time frame. Yeah. So, and maybe by the same people. Mm-hmm. I mean, whoever was building homes during that period of time, I'm pretty sure it had the same kind of roof. And I think this particular house was the only one that had this little bump out on the front.
Yeah,
it's the only one
that's
like
unique.
that. Yeah. Maybe you told me that. I don't know whether somebody else told me that, but anyway, I guess it's an unusual. And these are the original corbels, I guess, here on the corner of the house here. I would think they're original to the house.
Yeah, I think so. And I was told that this house was originally built for Billy Whitehead.
Whitehead, that's right.
Yeah,
that's
Dan
right.
Aiken
Yeah,
said that.
That's right. That's why I was trying to bring that deed. I have the original deed. I remembered as I was coming over here, I have my uncle's family Bible, and I think that deed is inside there. I remembered as I was coming here, but I think it shows, you know, the exchange of purchase and all that.
And that's the deed from 1919?
The deed from the original deed. No, the original deed.
Oh, gotcha.
We have the Whitehead deed too.
Oh, I got you. That's awesome.
Yeah. So, I don't know why that was in the papers. I guess they just, like, when they sold it, they just grabbed all the papers. I don't know why that happened, but yeah, you can see where it was built in the late 1800s. I guess 1897, maybe 18. When was your house built?
Mine was built between 1870 and 1880.
Oh, 1880. So maybe it was 1883, maybe. Yeah. I don't know if there's anything else to tell you. Did I talk about the dirt road there?
You did.
I already talked about that, okay.
Well, I got to say, what I know, or what I've heard about this house, is that it's the most unchanged house in Waverly Hall, and that the floor plan is still the same. There's been no major walls taken down.
Right.
and it's very unique in that aspect. It still has the original well on the back porch, which a
Right.
lot of houses around here had. Mine used to have a well on the back porch, but this one you can still see. So,
Yeah, and it was a working well. I mean, we kept things cold in it. I mean, it seems like I have a vague memory of them still using what we call an ice box, and I think they had kept the ice box on the back porch, and it was a literal, I mean, there was a block of ice in the box, and they would put, butter and whatever needed to stay really cold in that box. But they eventually got a refrigerator, which for a long time people still called it an ice box. But yeah, I remember, and I don't remember the well working when I was a young kid, but I mean, I know my brothers do. Certainly my sister Amberly and my brother Billy remember it working. My younger brother Thomas, I don't know if he remembers, but I don't remember it ever being a working well when I was around, but I don't know when they closed it up or anything, but yeah, my grandmother sold, I think I said this earlier, eggs and butter and all that sort of stuff. Did I talk about the telephone company?
You did.
Okay, good.
You did.
I want to make sure I don't forget all the history. My sister really needs to be part of an interview because she has so many more tales than I do. And of course, my sister, when we realized that the house was, going to change or something was going to happen, we couldn't have the breakfast here for 75 years. And, the 75-year run that ended with COVID, she wanted to get some things down. And so we wrote a book called The House on 208. So that's what we're calling it now, even though it was known as the Whitesnant Place. But all of our family either lived here or had some sort of activity on 208. And so, but all of the children that were raised in this house are all buried together in the Waverly Hall Cemetery, which is a real, probably a really unusual thing to happen because people scatter, And I tell the story of my husband when he and I got married. He was living in Texas. I lived in Texas, Oklahoma, Georgia. Then we moved to Florida, back to Georgia. And I told him when I came back to Georgia, I said, I'm staying in Georgia. If you want to go somewhere else, that's fine. And then when we moved to Waverly Hall, people said, are you going to be able to, you've lived in Atlanta all these years, you're going to be able to live in that little house in Waverly Hall? It's such a tiny town. I said, I can tell you this, I'm moving to Waverly Hall and I'm going to die and be buried in Waverly Hall. So that's my story and I'm sticking to it.